All right. So how you guys doing tonight?
Good. Good.
Good, yeah.
Oh yeah. How are y'all doing tonight? Thank you. All right. Exactly. How's everybody doing? Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, we're just gonna jump into this. So we want to learn about management, and there's all sorts of different things that go along with being a manager, an artist manager, and all that stuff. And so, what I'm gonna do is not do a lot of talking, and just jump into it. Lisa, can you just tell us how you got started? Like, what got you started managing artists? What did you do that's like was like, I want to manage artists, and this is what I'm gonna do.
I started out as an assistant to an artist because I wanted to travel the world and learn all the behind the scenes, and I was fascinated by that. So I did. I was living in New York City at the time, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I went to a management company in Los Angeles. I moved to LA from New York and just stayed there for 5 years, and then moved to Nashville and just kept going from management company to management company. And I finally met Peter Frampton 25 years ago. I can't believe I've been with him that long. But and so I live in Columbus now, and I commute back and forth to Nashville because that's where our company is. I work for Vector Management, and we have offices in LA and New York and Nashville.
And you manage Peter Frampton.
I manage
All right.
Peter,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
But I was an
So,
assistant for a long, long time and learned a lot that way. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you. And Adam, how about you?
I grew up in music and kind of on the performance side, and then I started studying the business side in college and started managing a local band in college, and that was kind of the start. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I'll continue by asking, what does your day-to-day life as a manager look like?
I guess the cliche answer is no day is the same, which I love. It's a very entrepreneurial, autonomous position where we're kind of tasked with executing our artist's vision and guiding the team and creating vision with the artists. So depending on what's happening and where the artist is in their cycle of, their career, it can be anything from dealing with things on the road or dealing with things in the studio or dealing with creative directors or, there's a smattering of day-to-day. So I would say, the only thing consistent in day-to-day is, just a lot of communication with the overall team that's behind the artist. We're always talking to not only our artists, but their attorneys and agents and business managers and record labels, and that we're always kind of checking in and keeping the ball moving forward.
Awesome. Same question for you.
same. Yeah. It's fun because you never know. You have to be able to pivot, and you never know what's coming at you. You're always constantly surprised, but it's fun, and it's always something different, and it's a good challenge.
That's exciting. It's always nice to have something that keeps you on your toes and something that's different every day. So speaking of things that are different every day and things that change and are not always the same, what are things to look for in a manager? If there's an artist now who is looking for a manager, I know everything is not the same for everyone, so that's why I know that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, but what types of things would you suggest right now? There's an artist that wants to say, hey, I want a manager, and what do I do to look for a manager? Lisa, what would you suggest?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. I think, finding someone that believes in you and is willing to work. We had this Zoom call I worked with a young artist for like 6 years, and it took like years to get her an agent. It's just having someone support you. And that could start out being a friend at first, to help you book shows. It's not easy. It's hard. And if you find someone that can believe in you to push throughout the business. It's kind of hard, yeah. I think it depends, because I've been in a management company, so just starting out, with a baby band and stuff, it usually starts with friends helping you. Have a friend try and get you gigs outside the city, outside the state. I don't know. Do you want to? It's kind of.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think like the foundation of so much of what we do is built on trust, So I think first and foremost, you have to find someone who you trust, and that trust is reciprocated. So, the manager needs to trust the artist, and the artist needs to trust the manager, and really from there you can build anything. But I think that foundational connection and, belief, as you were saying, and trust doesn't always mean agreement. I think that there's a differentiator of, hey, I trust that you have my back, even if I don't always see it the way you see it. Again, on both sides. But I think that, we always say internally at our company that we don't think like yes people are the best partners, because ideally you have a manager that's bringing value and adding a perspective that you might not always see, and helping to bring context to decisions and helping you think strategically about things. So, if you just have a person that's always going to say yes to everything all the time, that's a different role. So I think you have to really have like a deep trust, which is developed over time, but initially there should be something, which I think is, to your point, why a lot of it starts with friendship and just someone you already know, someone you trust, and someone that can like start pounding the pavement on your behalf.
I mean, one thing I would say, I'd be aware of people wanting you to sign a contract right away, because, it's like, I've never had a contract. I mean, with Peter, it was just always this, we hit it off and built up his career and took it to a management company. So, but I think you just have to be careful with people pushing for certain things right off the bat. It's like, you haven't even done anything for me yet, so why would I sign? How about we try something together first? Or, you just have to be careful.
And I'm really glad you said that, because that helps us segue into the next question, which is, what are some red flags to look for as far as management goes from an artist side, and then also from a management side? And I'm going to back that up with another artist-based question, but for now, since we started talking about what you would look for and saying, don't do that, what are just some red flags, not all of them or anything like that, but just what are some red flags that you go, whoa, pump the brakes?
Well, I think a contract, like I said, when you're just starting out, I think it's like a trust thing on both sides. And if you believe in someone enough to work for free, it's not like you're making money in the beginning. You work for years without making anything if you believe in someone hard enough and enough. So I think that would be a red flag for me as an artist. Now, as a manager, it's different because, I guess it would depend on the artist that you're looking at, and what they would, trying to get you to commit to something that you can't deliver. It just depends. I think it depends on that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I would say another red flag is something historically we've called double dipping. So, it's still out there, maybe not as widespread as it used to be, but back in the old days, you had managers who would manage your career, but they might also own a portion of your masters. They might also be participating in your publishing. And as managers, we participate in all revenue streams, but we don't own anything. And so, when you start hearing of managers who want to own your masters and own a piece of your publishing and manage you, that's a pretty big red flag.
Cool. Asking about that. So moving on from there, to bring it back to the artist-based question, we talked about what to look for in a manager. What do you, as managers, look for in an artist?
I look for ambition. I think Lisa touched on this, but as a manager, without red flags, you're kind of stepping into the deep end with your artist, and we're purely commission-based. So we're not making any money until our artist is making money, and generally a standard management commission these days is between 15 and 20%. So you guys can do the math. For an artist to be providing enough for a manager to make a living at 15%, that artist has to be pretty far along. So, you could be working with an artist for a really long time and not being put food on the table. So, I I started managing artists when I was 19. I was probably able to just be a manager by the time I was 25 or so, and that was an expedited timeline. I feel very lucky for kind of my career path, but so yeah, I would say that, yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I was going to mention with baby acts, as we call them, I think you just have to really be willing to do the work. And I've talked to some people here locally, some artists, and they were like, they only play in Ohio. And I'm like, why don't you go to St. Louis? You should go to where you can drive for the weekend. If you have a day job, during the week, and they're like, well, we don't know anybody in St. Louis. I'm like, well, you need to get there and you need to build a fan base. You got to do the work. You got to pay your dues. And it's just, a lot of people, I think, in the digital age or whatever, and I know socials are really important, but just because you post something on a social doesn't mean people see it or your fans see it, because the algorithms and all the crap that, all the different platforms are up to. So I think you just have to get out there. And believe me, I've called my sister in Atlanta, hey, can a band stay at your house, in a few weeks? And she's like, sure. And, just pulling favors and just helping people get on the road, because that's important. You got to build a fan base and get out there. And I just, maybe I'm old school, but you can't just rely on socials, to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, to continue to, ambition isn't just about money. I think that for me, I really look for artists who want to make a cultural impact and are in it for the right reasons. It actually is a red flag to me if someone's like, I want to be famous, or I want to make millions of dollars or whatever. That's great, but in my experience, you have to have an artist who there's not really a plan B. They're gonna be in this because making music and writing songs and performing those songs is the air they breathe, and they're gonna be committed to it in good times and in bad times. And having somebody who wants to put great art into the culture and build a community, and so I think to clarify, that type of ambition, not just I want to be famous, because a lot of people say that, and to your point, they don't really know the work that's involved in really building a career.
Right.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. And that's for sure. There's a lot. And when you said to get around to places that are drivable from Columbus.
Yeah.
Columbus is 6 hours from all sorts of places. It's so, it's I just know I have the whole spiel that our airport is international. Well, you can connect and get anywhere. We're 6 hour drive from so much of the
Totally.
I don't know the actual percentage of the country, but just a lot of great places you can get in your van and just go. So I feel you on that. Speaking of getting on the road and doing these things and creating your career before you get to a manager, what are some DIY type advice that you would give? What is some DIY type advice that you would give to people? So we're not quite ready to hire a manager, but what are some things that the band can do just to get themselves perhaps ready for a manager?
Well, as far as going on the road, like I said, I would have no shame, call family, call friends, wherever, outside of your local where you live, and just try and book a gig there and try and get on the road. And the routing it's a lot of work, trying to figure out, how to get from here to there, and without losing your everything. So for me, I don't know, that's a major part of it, is trying to get out there and really building your fan base.
Yeah, I agree. I would say a little bit of that, but also I think a lot of younger artists I talk to, I lived in New York City for a long time. I live in Nashville now. I think some artists have this perception that I need to move to one of these cities to get discovered or to get people's attention. And camp is a great example of this. I think that there can be a lot of value in creating something where you are. So, the camp guys started in Athens, Ohio, and they started playing house shows and open mic nights, and was Athens, Ohio. You know, it was a small town most people would have never heard of, but they started building momentum there and building a community there, and then that translated to Columbus, and then Cleveland, and then Cincinnati, and but it all started because they just took advantage of the opportunities that were in front of them, and I think if an artist is young and you move to an LA or you move to a New York or a Brooklyn or Austin, Texas or a Nashville, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but you're kind of putting yourself in a situation with a lot of competition, a lot of noise, and I think that there's value to honing your craft where you're at, whether that's Athens, Ohio, or Columbus, or Indianapolis, or Salt Lake City, or wherever you are. So I don't think it has to be a grand gesture. I think you can just do a good job where you are, and if it's working there, chances are it's scalable and it can work other places.
And one good idea too is, if you have fans already or just friends and, like I said, family in other cities, ask them, reach out, because people want to help usually. And if you put it out there on your socials or, just say, hey, I want to come to Detroit. Where should I play? I'm an acoustic, guitar player or whatever, and if you don't have those connections online, just try and reach out and see what, who maybe is similar to your music, and try and connect with other musicians. And, maybe you can swap, like you can help them get a gig here and they may help you get a gig in that city that you need. So, I think you have to be creative and really want to do it, to work.
Excellent. And at this point, we're going to open up questions to the audience. And so if you have a question, I would encourage you to, Olivia, you're going to, okay. Well, then Olivia's going to bring you the mic. I was going to tell you just come to the front of the stage and I was going to hand it to you, but sorry, but my pants make a lot of noise and they are making me laugh. So, okay, questions. We have a question out there. All right.
So for people looking to break into the music industry as a whole, what are some key things that you would include on a resume or overall formatting or anything relating to resumes in general?
You might have a different. I never sent a resume to anybody. I sent a ton of cold emails, but I didn't have a resume. I was a college student. So, I think that if you have applicable experience, like, of course, include that. But I think, I came from a small town south of Charlotte, North Carolina. I went to a state school. My family wasn't in the music business. I didn't know anybody in the music business. So it was just a very much like, if I was going to get in it, I just kind of had to claw my way in. So I researched a lot. I would read liner notes of who was this person's manager, who was their producer, who, was their record label, acts I looked up to as a kid. And then I started subscribing to Billboard magazine, and then I would Google LinkedIn people and try to find their email addresses, and then I would just kind of reach out with targeted emails like, hey, I really respect your work with so-and-so. I was wondering if you're looking for any interns, or I was wondering if I could have a 30-minute informational interview with you, or, just stuff like that. And I don't know, I would send a lot of emails, and mostly no one would respond. And occasionally you would get one person to respond, and you'd do a 30-minute phone call, and usually that beget other things. So they'd be like, oh, this is a great chat. You should meet my friend X at X company. And then you would, we probably say this too. It's find your champions. You don't need a lot of people. Same for an artist. If you get 30 no's, that's fine. You need one yes, So it's just, I think sending a resume into a sea of things is kind of living on a prayer a bit. I think if you're more targeted in your approach and you know what you want to do, or even if you don't know what you want to do, just start meeting people. And it's a small business, and people know each other, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this woman's committed, and she knows what she wants, and she's going after it.
Yeah, and if you're local, apply to Promo West or apply to, promoters or different, what the music scene is here, try and get a job and learn that side of the business because, we need to know all aspects of it. So, and also Music Columbus has that earn as you learn, you can be an intern and I think it's, how many months is it? I can't remember, but okay, yeah. Two. So, yeah, you can do that, and you can learn whoever's here, a studio, work at a studio, or a promoter, venue, whatever. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, guys.
My name's Maddie. I'm a local songwriter, and I'm working on just like picking up momentum. I don't really know if my career is going to go in a direction of being an artist or sync licensing or whatever, but I literally just write songs and go to open mics and songwriter rounds. But I'm curious, I have a friend who's interested in management, and I want to work with her, but I'm curious what your guys' opinions are about what momentum-driving responsibilities are the responsibility of the artist versus the responsibility of the manager, because I want to make sure that I'm, pulling my weight and doing my end of the deal and also not losing total creative control, but also accepting help when I know I clearly need it.
Well, all the artists that I've worked with have never asked me on the music thing. It's like I get the album delivered, right? And then like I hear the roughs and I hear demos and stuff, but as far as creative input, I've just always like, hey, I'm behind the scenes for a reason, and you give me the ball and I'll run with it. So I don't know what your relationship is, but every manager's different. Like some people are really like in the studio and contributing, but that's not been my experience. But I guess whatever you discuss and your goals together, just be really, if it's your friend, just be honest with each other. And I guess your expectations, well, they say what we do is manage expectations, right? So I don't know whether it's like you want to try and pitch songs to film and TV or, whatever. There's people here in town that do that, and you can actually find online some sync licensing people that work with indie artists that, because it's easier to clear if you own your publishing, and they don't have to go get permission from a label and blah, blah, blah. It can get done very quickly. So, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but yeah. I think it just depends on what your goals are together and what you want her to do for you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it sounds like you're still finding your way a little bit, which is totally cool. But I think the most effective artist-manager relationships, the artist has a pretty strong vision. At the end of the day, it's not our career. We're building a career with somebody else, but it's ultimately their vision. I kind of sometimes equate management to, if you're looking at it in a, objective business sense, the artist is kind of the founder of the brand, and the manager is like the CEO of that brand. So if the artist, if the foundation of the brand and what the artist is doing is a bit fuzzy, it's hard to know how to manage that. So I think, for instance, if you were like, I really want to be a songwriter, I would manage you in a different way than if you said, I really want to be an artist. Because there's certainly overlap, but there's a different approach that you would take, just depending on your personal goals. So it doesn't mean your goals can't change, but I think for it to be effective, giving her or him as much direction as possible is healthy.
My name is Tristan. I'm a singer-songwriter here. I'm wondering, like, maybe is there maybe a roadmap or like something that artists commonly face that they should be aware of and some way to navigate that, other than therapy, obviously?
Sometimes we're that too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for an agent is really important, because a manager, like, you're not supposed to book, technically managers aren't supposed to book, but of course, starting out you do, right? Because you're trying to help an act get on the road and get going. So I think it's a lot. If you didn't have any help at all, that's like so overwhelming, and I get it, because to handle all these things coming at you and you don't have any support, so I get why you could have freaked out and backed off. But I think having an agent, if you don't have a manager, like having an agent is so imperative, and that's hard to get to, and that's why it ends up being friends maybe in the beginning, like just calling around clubs, and trying to get booked. Now it's over email, but Back then, it was just calling, just cold calling and trying to get in. But, yeah, having a manager and an agent, obviously, that's like not a dream team, but kind of, you know, that definitely helps, because I don't know where to go, say in San Diego, or, you know what I mean? Like, if you're in different clubs, you need that perspective. And there are agents out there. There's smaller ones. There's big agencies, and there's smaller ones, too. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where your money was potentially coming from, but I think it's really important to have a good attorney. And some people, again, make the assumption that, like, oh, I can't afford an attorney, or I'll just read this and Google some things and I'll sign it. Or, you know, they get super excited because the red carpet was rolled out, or it's a big dollar sign at the end of the 20 pages and they sign it. So I think that a lot of fear can be dissipated just through education, as most things in life. You know, a lot of things you're going to come up in your career you've never done before, and I think that is a metric of success, right? You're growing and you're stepping into new territory, but I think it's about finding people who you can surround yourself with, who maybe have been there before and can take some of the mystery out and educate you on what you're unsure about. So, you know, again, I don't fully know what you were going through, but I think if you had someone to help contextualize and say, hey, this is what this money means, or this is the stipulations with this, or, and generally an attorney can be hourly based. They can also be commission based. So you're not paying an attorney out of the gate and they're helping you navigate some of these bigger things that can happen early on and end up being more egregious and ruin careers if you're not careful.
My question is to Lisa and Adam. Lisa, you mentioned on the front end, as a friend, you're booking dates, you're helping out in that capacity as a proactive. Adam, you mentioned that some days you don't know what the next day is going to bring. Every day's. So my question is, how much of your role is proactive versus reactive, and how much does that change during the course of your management life? Are you more proactive versus reactive on the front end booking versus reactive, the things are already in place and you're letting the process move itself? Is there a balance? And what is that? What are those proactive, reactive moments?
I think that as a manager, your posture should be to always try to be as proactive as possible. You know, again, we're kind of going before our artists to help pave the way. So I think, not saying you're never in a reactive situation, because oftentimes you are, and we call those putting out fires, but ideally you're proactive and you're anticipating things, so that you're always a few steps ahead of what you're entering into. So, you know, I would say that's how I prefer to operate.
yeah. I mean, it's your job to go after, you know, different situations or different events, just different opportunities for the artist. So, and it also depends on where the artist is. You know, sometimes they're so burnt out after a tour and they're just like, leave me alone. I don't want to hear from, you know. And then obviously if something major comes in that you want to run by them, you need to do that, but you just have to see where they're at too in their life. But yeah, it's always proactive, I would think.
Yeah, and if you've been
like,
proactive and you know the plan and the vision, then when something comes in that maybe wasn't part of the plan, you can still discern that based on the plan, you know? So it's like you have a plan, and this is just an example that's a pretty common example. It's like, if you've spoken to your artist and you've sketched out the next 24 months, then you know, because you've spoken to your artist, like they really want to be in the studio to make another record. So in your mind, in the calendar, you've, you know, blocked 6 to 8 months for them to like really focus on a record and not just be on the road. If you haven't had that conversation with your band, you might be taking offers of touring in random places throughout the calendar, and then the artist decides, oh, I want to make a record, and you have these dates and they can't get into a creative flow, or you're canceling dates, or it just becomes a mess. So I think, like, again, if you know the studio time is there and an offer comes in, of course you discuss it with your artist, but if it's already spoken for time, you can pass and not feel like you're passing on an opportunity that you're going to miss because you know there's something more important happening.
Do you have any other questions?
Yes, my name's King Monsier. I'm a rapper slash songwriter. My question is about kind of like social media a little bit, but basically like being a rapper, songwriter, that's the focus, but there's other things that, get more attention. So like if I wear a different wig or outfit, certain things like that. And so I kind of play into that, but do you think that can be like too much of stretching yourself out, doing too many different things could be bad? Or do you think that's something that you kind of have to keep playing with just until you find something? But
Well, I think it's what are you wanting to portray, you know what I mean? Or what is your goal? Like, do you want to be the person that's always somebody different? You know what I mean? It depends on what your vision is, I guess, and it just depends. I mean, that's kind of a personal, that's a creative thing, you know? I don't want to say, you should be the same thing over and over if you want to be something different all the time, you know? That could be a thing. That could be what makes you stand out. So I guess it depends on what you want.
Yeah, I think it's about authenticity, and if you want to wear a different wig every day, like you should wear a different wig every day. I think that the comment I would make is ultimately, do you want people talking about what wig you're wearing or your songs? So it's like sorry, I'm just running with the wig example, but if if you wearing a different wig is to bring attention to you and your brand that you're building so that people listen to your music, then that's great, So I would say that just make sure the substance is there with your music and your songs, and have fun and go for it, look at Prince, look at Madonna, look at any of these icons, they were building really interesting, creative, artistic brands visually and with multimedia and all these things. But at the end of the day, Prince was an amazing songwriter and artist, and that's why he lasted, not because he wore purple suits. He had amazing songs. So I think that, if the substance is there, like, do you, and don't look right or left at what other people are doing.
thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, Frampton's got 2 dates in Ohio this year, so I'm going to be there. And of course, Camp's going to be in Detroit, so I've got a road trip planned.
Great.
And I also, I love the questions. I loved your questions about communicating and, being really clear about who is doing what. And the proactive, reactive question was really cool. And your question about, your persona, are so great. And your responses are so interesting. And my question is so simple and base. But when you started managing baby bands, how much time did you spend with them on the road? And at what point did you say, this isn't going to work and I'm going to stop? Maybe it's because of alcohol, or maybe it's because of, you were talking about ambition. How do you decide when you're going to go ahead and lean into it and when you're not?
Do you mean like coming off the road with that artist to keep managing them, or parting ways with the person?
Like if you're managing a band, initially it's just a couple of you, right? It's a band and maybe a manager, and you're on the road with them, and you're booking ahead, you're calling, you're just totally, going out on a limb, calling everybody that you know in the whole world. Are you with them every step of the way on the road, or is your time better spent back at home making those phone calls and just counting on your band getting from location to location?
I never went on the road with my baby bands. I just set everything up. And if we didn't have a tour manager, because in the beginning you don't have a tour manager, one of the musicians in the band would usually be the one to do that, right? And I would just feed them the info, or have type up the itinerary and send it to them where they're going. But I never really went on them. But everybody's different, though. Some people are in the trenches with the band, in the van driving it for them, or whatever, and being the tour manager and the manager. So I think it just depends on the situation.
Where's your time best spent?
Well, for me it was back, on the phone and, trying to get the next gig or advancing, helping them out. so I didn't go on the road.
Yeah, again, I think it depends on at what phase of the manager's career and the artist's career you're in. I mean, the first artist I started managing, I was 19 and I was driving his Honda Civic at 2 a.m. after the gig back to the show and, selling
Sounds
CDs
awful.
at the merch table and figuring out this new thing called Facebook and how we made events to promote the next show and, calling blogs and cold emailing people in New York City and producers I had seen online. It was a mess. But you didn't know what you didn't know and you were just having fun and doing it. But I think at a certain point, the career builds, and then you realize, okay, I'm not as valuable anymore just being on the road, and I need to step away so that I can be looking farther ahead and not just like, what's the next day, what's the next gig. That being said, I still strongly believe in like being out on the road to an extent, so we're still showing up, coming to shows and being with our artists and checking in, seeing how they're doing and how their crew is doing and all of that. But once things build and you're able to have a team, I don't really know of any managers that are on the road full time with their artists. They're kind of coming in and out, but ideally you have a really competent tour manager that's keeping the road in lockstep and your artists happy and you're planning for the next tour.
My name's Brandon. My question is a little bit to piggyback off of hers, but when you have like the baby band and they start building traction, I don't know if you guys have had to deal with it. I'm sure you would. How do you combat ego with succession? So if I'm representing somebody and we are getting out of town now, we are playing around, but now it kind of seems like a lot of that is going to the heads and there's more excessive behavior than there was when they were just playing together locally, and now that it's getting more, social media posts are a little out of hand. After performances are getting out of hand. When do you go from being a manager to feeling like you need more help?
Well, I totally agree with what Adam said about being a yes person. I think I've lasted as long as I have because I don't blow smoke and I don't say yes just because you're the artist and, because I work for them, they don't work for me. So if somebody is getting out, you can only do what you can do. I mean, I've never had that experience with the baby band because they were hungry enough to put in the work, and really, yes, did they have attitude sometimes? And yes, did they, not want to hear it? But sorry, I'm supposedly getting paid for advice, right? And so, but I've worked with more established bands that would go off the rails and the lead singer would disappear for a few days and they're on tour and you don't know what to do. And so that's a different situation. But the baby band, I don't know, have you experienced with there's always ego with everyone, right? Because I always say you have to have an ego and believe in yourself to really want it, to make it. So, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a jerk either, right? So I think it's natural for people if it's starting to build and get an ego and everything. But I luckily have never had to do anything, drastic or whatever. I haven't fired anyone but you do have to have a talk. And be like, are you serious about this or not? Because it's not just you, it's your bandmates or if there's a crew or, there's a whole team working hard for the same goal. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you just have to have honest conversations, and if there's behavior happening on the road that, isn't in the artist's best interest, even if, again, they think it is, it's your job as a manager to speak up and to say, hey, there's repercussions to what you're doing, and, this is not only affecting you, but it's affecting my relationships in the business, it's reflecting your bandmates, and you can do that in a gentle way. I think timing is everything, so, find a time you feel like that person's going to hear what you're saying and not feel attacked or not feel, like you're being talking down to them. But I think you have to have an honest conversation and kind of back to his question before, I think a lot of those flare-ups are, in my experience, indicative of fear. There's something happening where they're acting out, and that's how they're acting out. So maybe it's a control thing where they feel like their career's growing and they're losing control, or they're fearful of X, Y, or Z. And so I think also just leveling with that artist and being like, hey man, like what's up? Like let's talk. Like let's go for a walk. Let's grab a beer. Let's like just be people. And then you can kind of get under the surface and figure it out and hopefully continue to build together. But you know, there comes a point where if that's not working and it's creating toxicity, then sometimes you have to step away. But I would say just having honest conversations is the first part of the solution.
Awesome. Thank you.
I have two questions if that's allowed, but if not, I can just ask one.
I don't know how much time we have.
Just
but
go
yeah.
ahead and start with the one, and we'll keep moving from there.
The first question has to do with like how you market yourself. I'm in a band that prides itself on having a lot of influences in the sound, and we work really hard at that. But it does make it difficult to like pinpoint the nature of the sound when it comes to labeling genre, right? I feel like there's someone when you're applying to festivals, when you are trying to like set things up with other bands, like how can you, do you have any advice on how to try and capture what it is that you sound like so that it's easier to market to who it is you're trying to market to?
I think genre is like more relevant today than it has been in a long time. So I don't think it matters quite as much. Of course, people still like to categorize and say, you know, that's singer-songwriter, this is folk, this is rock, this is whatever. But I think the streaming economy has kind of like opened the gates to genre. So I guess my answer is like, I don't know that you need that. I think that you should try to create something that's more singular, you know, than like trying to be something else. And I'm not saying you're saying you're trying to be something else, but I think like if you're working together as a band to create a sound that's influenced by others, but that's like uniquely your own thing, I think that is good. You know, of course, people want, I think you could say like, you could even say your influences, and that by proxy gives people some frame of reference for genre. There should be like a cohesiveness to what you're doing. So maybe if there's not a cohesiveness, finding that somewhere, you know. But like another client of mine, they're very much a rock band, but they also have songs where it's just acoustic guitar and vocal. And, you know, they're still a thing, they still have an audience, but it's not, you know, Camp is another example. It's like, there's some songs that are super rock and roll, and there's some songs that are just really laid back acoustic. So I think it's okay to be cross-genre.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of artists that don't like that, right? Like they don't want to have to pick one because it's like, I'm more than that or whatever. But yeah, basically what Adam said, yeah, you have to pick one, I guess, if you have to. Or start your own, make up your own.
Alternative is the catch-all. You know?
Then the only other question was, what's the marker that you actually need a manager? Like it seems like it's running fairly well on its own. Is there a sign that you could say to look out for that would indicate that a management addition would be the best choice?
I think when managers start calling you, I think that an artist continuing to like build their own fire is the best way to get good management. So I think people kind of clawing on the doors of management maybe aren't ready for a manager.
Yeah, and I was going to say, or you start to get in over your head, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is too much, I need help,
Yeah.
you know, and then you're like, okay, who can I find to help with booking or managing, whatever.
Thank you.
I'm a student with experience with the venue side of things, working at Promo West, but would love to gain experience on the tour and artist side of things. What advice do you have for somebody who has a lot of experience in one side, but has like no experience on that side, like, what would I be looking for to cross over?
I know that there's some Facebook pages for crew, for people looking for crew, or they'll post, hey, you know, I want to go on the road this summer, or, that's one way on socials. I know a lot of people, some of my crew that have looked actually to check out people that have applied, so just check it out and see if they're legit or whatever. But I know there's some things like that. I mean, it's kind of word of mouth, really, right? Like when,
Yeah.
so if you wanted to say, try the touring side, is that what you're saying, or trying to get on the road? Yeah, I guess it's word of mouth, right? If a band's looking for someone and.
Yeah, I
mean,
would
that's
just say
kinda-
just start going to a lot of shows and hanging out at venues, and selling merch locally is a great way to get integrated with bands. Like local merch sellers who sell and are super organized and box up and help load out the boxes on the truck. Like that kind of thing is going to get the attention of a production manager or tour manager, and they'll be like, hey, you want to just like get on the bus and sell merch for us everywhere? So I think just whatever you want to do, like trying to be in that space. Like if you want to be in radio, just like start hanging out at radio stations and going to their on-sites and emailing people. If it wants to be live, like go to venues and start getting to know the bartenders and the GMs, and just kind of keep raising your hand. And generally something will shake loose just because of persistence. They're like, okay, fine, we'll give you a job. Yeah.
And if you're a student, NARAS, the Recording Academy, like I've been a Grammy, I think it's called Grammy U mentor, and you can apply to be a mentee, and they match you up, and it's really fun. Like I helped the girl that I mentored last year, now works at Vector, and then she's going on the road with Live Nation to be a VIP rep to help out with Jason Aldean. So it's really neat. Like if you can get into, you should apply if you're a student, if you're interested in that, and that's really neat. A neat way to meet people in the business, because they do really look at all the applicants.
For sure, thank you.
Hey guys, I'm just curious about, I'm not really that familiar with the role of management companies. I know you guys both said you were working with, I think you're with Vector and Mick Management. So I guess my question is, what are your personal experiences working in a management company, and what are the positives, and what is the role in the general industry of the management company versus the individual manager?
Yeah, so I was an independent manager at first. I didn't have anywhere to, go, so you just do it on your own. I think for me, the decision to join a larger firm was really just, again, like on behalf of my artists. I'd only been working with Camp for about a year and a half, but I could already feel like a certain sense of momentum, and I was still pretty young at the time and knew that like my plateau of learning was starting to happen, and I knew it was happening too early. And so I wanted to put myself in a position where I was learning more, I was having mentorship, I was having more shared resources that ultimately would benefit my client. So that was a massive part of my decision of, it was like, what's the cliche? Like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That kind of thing, where it was like, okay, I could keep doing this by myself, but I could see kind of where that was going to end, versus surrounding myself with an expert team to then be able to provide all that value back to my clients. So it's a fit thing. Like I met with a lot of management companies and landed on Mick for specific reasons, but yeah, I have plenty of friends who are solo managers, and I have plenty of friends who have started their own little shops, and then lots of friends who are at massive management companies. So you can have success in any of them. It's just my personal preference was to be a part of a small team.
Yeah, basically the same. We had built it up, like I said, for about 10 years, and Peter was finally won a Grammy, his first one, which was exciting. And then, it's nice because these companies used to only manage, and then all of a sudden, we're putting out records, and we're a record label too, you know, and you're doing that at Indie. So I learned a lot being with Vector and having a social media team to help me with things that I can only do so much. But, you know, all these young kids these days can whip out a video or whatever. So, you know, so it's just been really good, the connections that I've made, and, you know, the other managers I'm learning and hearing, you know, because our company, we have like classic rock, and then we have pop, and then we have Americana, and so it's kind of neat to see, you can learn from everyone what everybody's up to, and you're like, oh my God, I can apply that to a classic rock artist, what this, and like Americana's doing, or vice versa. So it's been really beneficial to kind of see and hear what they're doing too, because when you're on, you're so myopic kind of, and you're on your own little world. So I like being around and brainstorming and hearing what other people are up to.
So it's sort of like a collective is the idea. It's like a collective of different managers that are all pooling resources. Is that the?
Yeah, I mean, again, every company's different. I mean, at MIC, we have managers, and then we have day-to-day managers, but then we also have what we call shared services. So we have a digital team, so there's a strategist, there's a social media person, we have a touring team. They're, you know, liaising with us, but also with our agent partners and promoters on a daily basis to get everything we can for our artists in the live side. We have a radio team. So we've really built MIC almost like an independent label, and part of that is to give our artists like as much autonomy and ownership of what they do for as long as possible. I think, I've not done a study on this, but I think if you were to look at independent managers who it's just 1 or 2 person show, their artists are probably signing label deals earlier, which is fine. But again, at MIC, because of the way we're structured, our artists can hold off. So by the time they do a label deal, they're going into those deals with a lot of leverage and getting the best terms possible, as opposed to like if I'm an indie manager, I need help as a team, so I'm going to be more encouraging of my artists to sign a deal so that we can have a team. So again, everybody's different, but that's how we're set up.
Okay, one more thing. I'm sorry, and that'll be done. Do you accept artist applications, or is it a manager has to bring an artist into the company?
No, I mean, we have people reach out all the time. I think, you know, I don't think I've ever worked with an artist from a cold artist email. It's usually come through a different referral.
Yeah, it's
So
usually word of mouth from an
yeah.
attorney or an agent, or, you know, saying, you know, hey,
Yeah.
are you interested in this artist? They need help.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't have applications like in that way. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Onyx. Since I was younger, music's always been in my life. When I was a teenager, I did the jazz arts group, and Amber Nicole was my vocal coach. Hi, honey.
I was looking at you. Hey.
Hi. So, like, I stick with it, but life constantly, it be life in. So, just supporting yourself as an independent artist and, like, looking for sponsorship. Like, you have any advice on that? Or just because it gets a little discouraging and people are like, oh, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. And I'm like, yes, I do, because you know on the inside what you deserve and what you desire out of life, especially with music. So I just get discouraged because working 2 full-time jobs and trying to support myself and do gigs in the middle of the night, it's a lot. Like, do you have any advice or encouraging words for your girl? Because I'm going through it.
I mean, I hate to say it, but that's kind of, you know, the baby acts that I work with, they did have day jobs too. And, you know, they, like I said, the weekends, they just hit the road and come back. And I know it's tough. As far as sponsorships and things, that would be tough. But I know that, I don't know if there's grants here in town. I know that different, yeah.
There's a GCAC grant.
Yes,
Now that
yes.
you're out of school, you can apply for artist funds. And there's a round that's open now, and they close June 1st. So you can go and get up to $1,700, I believe, for an individual artist. So there's GCAC grants, I know specifically here, as far as money goes, but. Oh, and the,
Yeah.
yes, musiccolumbus.com is where all of this information will be, but yes, there's that. Ohio Arts Council.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My friend Carlson had one question.
Sorry, I don't know if this is helpful. The only thing I would add is your let's just call it your side hustle because your passion is music, so that's your main job. So I think like whatever your side hustle is, making that as contained as possible. So I don't know what your two jobs are, but like, yeah, so like that can be a super taxing job. You're on your feet a lot, you're late at night, you're dealing with people, which isn't always super fun. So maybe it's a matter of like finding a different day job that isn't as draining for you so that you can give more to your art, you know? I think that like if you're working double shifts and I mean, yeah, you're not going to be creative. Your tank's going to be empty and you're not going to want to write or sing, you just want to sleep. So, you know, one of my clients is primarily a songwriter. Her name's Natalie Hemby, but like not a super sexy job at all. But for a while, she like worked at Comcast in their call center and would just like call people. And who wants to be a telemarketer? Nobody. But like, she clocked in, she clocked out. It was an easy job. She got paid well, and she could go home and write songs. And nobody was like calling her after hours. So I think it's not so much about like having a sexy job. Just if you can get a job and do the least amount of work to pay the bills and create more space for you to do what you want to do. Sorry, what was your
This is a question that I thought someone would have asked, but it's been like an hour now. How do I find a manager? Because I'm lost.
We're kind of elusive.
Like you're hiding, or I'm supposed to go to Craigslist, or like when am I supposed to
Yeah,
go?
exactly.
Not Craigslist.
Well, I was really inspired seeing how many people were at our December meeting here with Angel Lopez, and how cool he constantly wrote Timbaland. I don't even know how many times until he finally got an answer. And I'm not saying that's not a manager, but, you know, maybe find some of your favorite artists and see who their manager is, like you read in the liner notes or whatever, or locally. I assume you're local. I don't know, besides us, who's here managing. You're in Nashville, but yeah, go for it. I just, you never know.
Yeah, I think just, again, part of the theme of tonight, just ask yourself why you need a manager, what you need out of that person, and then start doing some targeted outreach.
I guess this is kind of along those same lines. My name's Jonathan. I play in a local band called Easy Tiger, and we've like found some modest success here and there. Like it feels like we've hit a ceiling. We can't progress, so we're very much still a baby band. And I know, the old kind of adage or whatever that, once you're ready, they'll come looking for you. So I don't want to go banging on doors over and over and be bugging people. But we spoke with one manager who suggested we start an LLC, if only for the purpose of kind of establishing your own internship program, contacting schools, and then you have basically kids doing the social media stuff for you. But that's even more work, and it's like I haven't written a song in a year because I'm doing all the behind the scenes stuff or whatever. You said you kind of started in school. Are there programs that somebody can reach out to? Are there like professional organizations that might have Facebook groups that you could go and just kind of find somebody that's still early on that's willing to pick up a baby band like ourselves?
Yeah, there are. I mean, we said this at the beginning, but if there's like a friend or an acquaintance in your circle, I find that like that can be a really good place to start, even if it's not an indefinite thing. You can also, I don't know what kind of revenue you guys are generating necessarily, but like if you're looking for a specific thing like social media, you can, reach out to some universities for like a social media intern or, something like that. I think it's not, the manager artist thing is just such an intimate thing that it's like you kind of have to meet each other halfway. So I think, I wish it was as simple as like you kind of reaching out and someone to raise their hand and be like, I'll manage you. But most of the time, it's just a more complicated relational thing. So that's why I think starting with some relational thread, even if it's distant, is a good way to like start building. You know, I think a lot of successful bands have started with a friend of a friend, and that person didn't ultimately become their manager, but they helped enough to get them to a manager.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Danielle, and I am a solo manager for a local band here. The reason why we've been given some amazing opportunities has been because of the people that we've met. And it really does become, it seems, it's about who you know. So kind of piggybacking off of a couple things here, you essentially build up momentum locally. Wherever you are, you can prosper within that. You don't have to move. You can, prosper in your state. You can go regionally. You can go nationally. And, you could be playing places like Natalie's or festivals all over, and you're just growing a fan base. At what point, or are there any purpose or, I guess, validation towards those cold calls or cold emails? Because you said it yourself, you actually don't think you've never managed a band that submitted a cold email. So after kind of growing that momentum, are you just hoping and waiting that somebody reaches out to you? Like, hey, you know what? I do like them. Because I've come across no email responses, or you have agents and they reach out to their friends, but everybody's so busy and they're up to their eyeballs.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, did you say you were managing a band, or you're in the band and also managing it?
Oh, no, I don't perform. I just am the independent solo manager for a band.
Okay, got it. Sorry if this was misconstrued. I would say as a manager in the early days, it's almost your job to just send cold emails. Yeah. On the artist side, I think it's not as effective. I've had certain artists actually come up with pen names, so they're the same person, but they're a manager reaching out under a different name. But yeah, I think like again, I'll just use camp as an example, but when I started working with camp and trying to figure out the right agent fit, I knew that like we needed to get on the road and needed an agent, and I just started researching other bands that they had told me were influences and people that I thought could be a fit, and a couple agent names just kept coming up. And so I just started cold outreaching to agents. And part of it was like, do you have any openings on support? Like, can my band jump on with your band? Part of it was like, my guys are worth X number of tickets in Columbus. Like, your band's coming through Columbus. I see the show's not sold out. Can we add local support? Some of it was, hey, this is camp. This is how many tickets they're doing in these 3 markets, and we need an agent. And actually, one of their agents to this day was a guy I just cold outreach to. So I think depending on your artist goals and your goals, and it sounds like you've already had some good success, which is a super exciting place to be, but I think figuring out like where are you going to want to go next, who's already there, and who could be a fit, and just start blasting. And again, you probably are going to get mostly no response, but it's also, we have this funny thing where you're blasting out and you're getting no's all the time. And now with camp, like, I'm saying no all the time. They've kind of built their career and people are reaching out, and we're like, sorry, we're going to pass on that, But the tides flip. So in those early days, you're hearing no all the time, and it's just part of the gig. It doesn't mean you're like failing or doing a bad job. You just got to find like those 1 or 2 yeses, and then you'll keep building.
But also, if you have promoters that you work with all the time, tell them, hey, we need an agent, or if you've got a good
Mm-hmm.
relationship with people that keep rebooking you, or if you guys are building, let people know we want an agent, and see if they could like introduce you or something. You just have to be bold and.
So just continual pitching and overcoming objections.
Yeah.
And not taking offense to possibly ending up in their spam folder.
Right.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Sorry, it's a pretty thankless thing,
Yeah.
and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, but then the one thing will happen, and it will open the door.
Cool. Thank you.
If you're managing like a baby band and you're trying to do like the press releases and stuff, I mean, I imagine it's kind of different now because you're like, sup, it's Adam, I got this new baby band or whatever. But like, suppose you're also, you know, small. How do you kind of, what gets them to really bite because they don't know you and they haven't heard, like, say they're going to release an album in a couple months, 6 months or whatever. Like, what's the timeline that you'd reach out to them about that? And then also, how do you even entice them because they haven't heard it? Do you send them the unreleased album and hope they don't pirate it or whatever?
You mean press? You mean sending?
Yeah, like write-ups or, you know, blogs, magazines, newspapers, stuff like that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I think you have to send the music for sure. I mean, you could send a private SoundCloud, you could send a, you know, password-protected Dropbox link or something, but yeah, music journalists are definitely going to want to hear the music. You don't have to send it out of the gate. If you get an initial response, then you can send it, you know? But I would say that if your artist is on the road, like inviting photographers out, inviting writers out to see the show, yeah, press is hard, but I would say, again, sending a lot of notes and getting not a lot of responses. But in terms of your question about timeline, long lead, which is a dying breed, but that's what we call like print journalism. I mean, they're 4 or 5 months out generally. Sometimes you can get a long lead for 3, but it's tough. You know, digital outlets, I would say 6 to 8 weeks in terms of a lead time. So you don't want to be like too early where they're like, we're not even thinking about that yet, but you also don't want to be too late. So I would say, yeah, if you're just pitching for like online coverage, 6 to 8 weeks from release. If you're pitching for like a Rolling Stone and print article, then pitch like 6 months.
Cool, thank you.
We have time for a few more questions.
I was just about to say that.
Hi, my name's Jason Smith with Bertha Hill Music here locally. I'm a solo manager with a small roster of artists. How does someone like me, without moving outside of Columbus, as a single dad, I have no interest in doing that, can't really do that. How do I link up with people as possible mentors to help me kind of grow my knowledge and ability to benefit the artists that I'm trying to work with here in Ohio?
There's certain conferences and music for managers that go, and you know, I don't know if that's a possibility to go to a conference and schmooze and try and meet people. You know, I don't know how many would be looking for a partner. Obviously, I think it just depends on, yeah, you know, what the situation is at that time. But I guess just trying to get out, not leaving Columbus, but trying to get outside here and meet other people to see if there are people interested in your acts, you know, that want to help. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think people have this perception that the music industry is like too cool for school and people are inaccessible and, you know, no one's gonna want to talk to me because I don't have something they need. But I think more often than not, everybody in the music industry is like us. They started from nowhere. They remember what it was like. You know, we're retelling these stories of when we were, you know, where I was schlepping it and just figuring it out, you know. So I think, like, for that reason, I always try to respond when someone reaches out and, like, is asking for help or whatnot. So I think if you just reach out to artists, managers who, you know, have built careers that you look up to, again, like, who doesn't like flattery, you know? It doesn't mean that you have to partner with them. Like, I have plenty of mentors that don't work with me, and I still call them or get coffee with them all the time. We check in on how things are and what challenges they're up against and, you know, so I think, you know, you don't have to, like, join Red Light Management or join a company. I think you can just find some people that are good friends that are maybe a couple steps ahead and they can help you along, and if at some point it makes sense to partner, great, but I would reach out more so just with a relational, you know, hey, I really admire your work and respect your work, like, would you have time for me to pick your brain on some things?
Were there any other questions before we wrap? Oh, looks like in the back we have another question. And I think this will be the final one. All right, this is our final question. It looks like from Paul Hoy.
Yeah,
All
my
right.
name's Paul, and I've got a very quick, simple question. What's your capacity? So obviously you've got very established artists that are on your roster. What's your capacity to add additional artists as either an individual or with the companies that you represent?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, I've had up to 3 or 4 artists at a time, and right now I just have Peter. So I think it just depends. Like, how much do you want to work? You can always find people that need help. So, but the company I can't really speak for because there's so many different, probably like you, like there's so many different managers, with different, some people have 1 person, some people have 5. I think it just depends on, their personal life and what they want. And,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
think it varies drastically, I mean, you have somebody like Scooter Braun or Corin Capshaw, and those guys are managing 50, 100 artists, but it's like, in what capacity are they managing? So I would say if you're talking about someone who's like very active in an artistic career on a day-to-day basis, your capacity might be, 4 to 6 artists, depending on what phase they're in. I think as a manager too, you try to be honest with your clients about capacity. So it's a conversation we have with our artists pretty often. It's like, if everyone's like, we want to put out an album in July, we're like, well, you're going to be up, let's try to space this out a little bit. I know, I don't know his name right now, but he's Shakira's manager and Pink's manager and, massive clients. But he tells his clients, like, I can do 1 album a year, so pick your year. So, like, if Pink's putting out an album that year, like, Shakira, you got to go next year. So, I think it's just, again, honest conversations with your client and getting ahead of it. And if you want to be Corin and build a massive management company, then you partner with a lot of other managers who are doing that work, and if they need to call Corin for something big, they call him, but he's not managing day to day. I mean, he's still managing Dave Matthews and Chris Stapleton, but not the baby bands on Red Light you've never heard of,
All right, well, thank you. Let's have another round of applause for Lisa and Adam, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Amber Nicole. Thank you for coming to this Music Columbus Music Business Monday. Please sign up on the email list and you'll continue to get all sorts of information about all things Music Columbus, and follow Music Columbus on socials at Music Columbus. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.